Hello, and welcome to Mike and Matt Pull Focus. I'm Mike.
And I'm not.
And today we're going to be talking about the 1989 movie Batman, directed by Tim Burton, starring Jack Nicholson, Michael Keaton, and Kim Basinger. Now, Matt, you are much more familiar with the Tim Burton Batman films than I am. That's fair to say, right?
That's fair to say. I think they were the original forbidden movies for me. The movies that were sort of aimed at children but were too adult to be accepted by my parents in terms of violence and, pure blood, gore and guts on the screen, especially in Batman Returns. But in the original Batman, there's plenty of it as well.
Was it the first one to get a 12 certificate or 15 certificate rating?
They were both 15, on release, which stayed the same for the VHS release, because that's one of my original memories of being a kid and being at a friend's house and seeing the Batman Returns VHS with the Catwoman, Penguin, Michael Keaton faces on the front with a big 15 stamp,
right?
Which as a kid was a stamp of approval.
Oh yeah,
a seal of approval that you knew this was going to be good.
Yeah,
if it had any kind of red
the
stamp
forbidden
on it.
fruit angle.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. But myself, I never really. I think it was a bit too forbidden for me when I was younger. My parents were a bit too more strict, so I never got around to watching them. Unfortunately, it was just like here or there, seeing an advert with Jack Nicholson's face on being the Joker and thinking, "That man looks very scary. I don't think I want to watch that."
Well, it was the Batman that I was saying this to someone recently. It's the Batman that we always knew was the sort of adult Burton Batmans, because we didn't grow up with the Adam West series or the Adam West movie.
Yeah.
So when people would talk about this, comic book, brightly coloured kind of pastel thing with humour in it, I didn't quite get, what they were talking about, because what we always knew was the Tim Burton, the dark, gory, violent, Batman, which is awesome growing up with.
Well, yeah, I think my first introduction was probably Batman Forever, the Tommy Lee Jones and Jim Carrey.
You saw that first?
That was probably the first one. I think because I was around about around about the right age. It was like 1996, wasn't that came out? Was it
Batman Forever was actually 1995.
Oh right, okay, wow.
Yeah,
okay, fair enough.
It's always earlier than I remember. Than I think it was. It came quite early. But that's good. That's a good thing in a way, that it could only get better for you then, because you saw the trash, and then you could work your way backwards. And
exactly. So Batman Forever, and then Batman and Robin, and then went back and saw Batman, and then Batman Returns.
Yeah.
So it's a weird way of doing it, but I think it was because of my obsession with Jim Carrey at the time. He was like my idol back when he was doing Liar Liar, Dumb and Dumber, Ace Ventura, and then Batman Forever.
Yeah.
It was like, oh, that funny man who does the weird faces is going to be the Riddler. So I'm familiar with who the Riddler is.
And that was the absolute height of his fame. I mean, you couldn't argue with that. He did done the big three in 1994, the Dumb and Dumber, Ace Ventura, and The Mask, all in 1 year.
That's a mental year.
Which I assume then was followed directly by Batman Forever. That was probably his next movie. Or Cable Guy, I think, might have come in between.
Yeah.
But yeah, huge movies. Anyway, back to
Sorry,
Batman 89.
We're already on a bit of a segue.
Yeah. Let's be professional, as professional as we can.
Yes, focused and professional.
Yes.
That's our brand now.
Yeah.
So we've recently watched it in a cinema setting, not on a big screen. Actually, they're being played at the Stockport Plaza, which is a really nice, elegant kind of 1950s, 1960s picture house. Right?
Yeah, it's the, I think it might even be older than that, because it kind of is more the Art Deco style, which actually kind of fits in with the Batman look, the original sort of 89, because some of it's a weird mishmash, like the production design is kind of a weird mishmash of kind of 1930s gangster film noir, with a kind of a neon punk look as well. It kind of goes into more of what's called cyberpunk kind of thing going on.
I did notice a lot of
steampunk thing.
Yeah, well, all the steam from the rooftops and all happening, and with all the gangsters with the trilby hats and the big waistcoats and I'm gonna gun you down, sort of thing that everyone was doing.
You don't quite know what era you're in. I think that's what's kind of cool about it, is it kind of is in this universe where that's not particularly, I guess it's kind of the comic books, because the comic books came out of is it 1940s?
Yeah,
Batman, yeah,
I
it's
think
like
so.
that old 1940s, kind of 50s. So it's kind of, I guess, a bit of an homage to that. But it's also very, very Tim Burton as well, as he was kind of, defining his sort of style and his look at that time.
Well, that's the thing. I feel like we're getting a bit too into it at the moment, but I came from it from a place where I'm not too familiar with this film. So it was kind of like I was seeing it for the first time. Like, I think the first time I saw it was back when I was like 10 years old or 12 or something. And so a gap from 12 to 30 is like a massive gap to have no knowledge of a property apart from, say, the Christopher Nolan Batmans or the Lego movie Batman.
So you don't know it verbatim, you don't know it off, the script off, but because I'm not I'm ashamed to say those two movies, especially Batman Returns, the sequel, but the originally I absolutely watched to death. It must be like,
So coming from this from a standpoint of I didn't really know what was happening.
Yeah.
I mean, like, I'm familiar with the whole, his parents get murdered, he's a rich kid, fights crime being a vigilante, but when these people in trilbies and having Tommy guns are all being accosted by this Tim Burton car that comes out of nowhere with like flames at the back and machine guns coming out the side, I was like, what era is this supposed to be taking place in? Is this the 70s, the 80s? Do
you mean the Batmobile
20s?
itself kind of looked
well,
like...
yeah, just it's so out of place in terms of if this is going to be a 1920s film or a 1930s film, where with the aesthetic being the gangsters of like Chicago or St. Valentine's Day Massacre.
It's like every single kind of element is from a slightly different period. Like it's kind of interesting. Like all the costumes of the gangsters are all kind of film noir. So I guess like 1920s, 30s. Yeah. Then all the phones are like 1950s telephones. In the newspaper office. That's from a completely different era. Then Batman and the car is just kind of a modern. 1989, 1980s kind of vision of Batman. That's like a whole thing. So the technology in it is all over the place. Like it's all different periods. But that's what gives it the unique,
a timeless feel.
Timeless feel. Yeah.
Setting it in a time that can't be defined just allows it to be watched whenever.
Yeah, that's the same with a lot of movies. Like that they age better because you can't sort of tie them down. If all the cars were late 80s cars or whatever in the street, you'd say, oh, this looks kind of outdated.
Yeah.
And apart from some of the special effects, which we'll talk about later, it doesn't really look dated because it just looks of this kind of weird like multiverse where everything's from a different era.
Yeah, but still I liked the aesthetic of it, and I thought it was very eye-catching. Tim Burton back then, I feel now that he's not I feel like he's a bit of a one-trick pony. He's just doing the same style every time, and I'd like to see a bit of range. But for the time being, was this like one of his first films? Had he done Edward Scissorhands beforehand? Or?
So you got Pee Wee Herman's Big Adventure was his first movie, which I think came from a TV show. I don't know what came first, if the movie came first or if the TV show, the American TV show came first and then they made a movie of it.
Yeah,
but
it's more of an American property, isn't it? Pee Wee? So I'm not too familiar with it.
I came to Pee Wee Herman a lot later. In my teens, I think it was like a video that I found in my friend's house that was like, it wasn't something that we knew as English kids.
Yeah.
And then you had Batman 89, and then Edward Scissorhands came straight after.
Was that 1991, something like that?
1990, I think.
Yeah.
And then Batman Returns was 92.
Right.
So those are the three in a row. So he did have a break with Edward before he went on to do Batman Returns.
But still,
that for me, those are his big three. I think those are just untouchable. I think they're completely him, completely Tim Burton.
He'd found his stride by the end of Pee-wee and was able to actually adapt Batman into his own gothic styles.
Yeah.
Edward Scissorhands the same, and then Batman Returns being like his... This is everything I've learned up until this point, and here's everything I can do fantastically. Yeah.
I think after the success of Batman in 1989, they obviously just wrote him a blank check and said, you made so much money with Batman, which it did. It was amazingly successful. Yeah. That they said, you can do whatever you want. They did Edward Scissorhands, which was successful, and then he made Batman Returns, which was slightly successful, but was completely bonkers. And that's when they started taking his toys away from him and saying, you can't do Batman 3. You can't do that.
Yeah, they wanted it to be a bit lighter, didn't they?
Yeah.
They didn't want it to go down the, oh, look at this horrible monster biting a man's nose off kind of direction.
Batman Returns, we'll do another podcast on that. I mean, that deserves a lot of attention because that's completely nuts. Yeah. And
But we're coming at a different angle for these films, aren't we? Where one of us is probably going to be more familiar with the property than the other person, and so we're going like right here, right now. You are the expert with Batman 89, and I am the novice with Batman 89. Would you say that's about right?
I say you don't know it verbatim like I do, but I mean, like, you know, I wouldn't call myself an expert on it, but I certainly love it, and and it's still the Burton Batmans, especially Batman Returns, I think are the best Batmans. I just absolutely love them.
Okay,
but then it's apples and oranges, isn't it? I mean, they're completely
very true.
Nolan
very true.
movies are a completely different thing.
So, what about this would you say is better than the Dark Knight trilogy? So,
I think it's. As much as I do love the Dark Knight trilogy, especially the second two parts, I think Batman Begins is very average, but that's a very unpopular opinion. But I think it is. I think the Dark Knight and the Dark Knight Rises are absolutely brilliant. But I think you might have to get into the post 9/11 realism of, you know, that movies took on after 9/11. They had to be based in some sort of scientific reality, because we'd seen huge set pieces in real life. We'd seen the Twin Towers go down, so we knew what action looked like in real life. Whereas before that, you were much more in this fantastical world where anything was possible. You didn't really it didn't have to make logical sense, or, you know, it could be a bit more fantastical. So I think that Batman and Batman Returns sit in that kind of space where, even though, you know, the machinery and everything is very kind of, you know, it looks very practical and like it could work, there's still elements of the stories that are supernatural and they have a kind of a supernatural edge to them. Yeah. And like we said about the universe thing, you know, that makes absolutely no sense, but it works. Yeah. You don't question it, it just works in that universe. Whereas it certainly wouldn't work these days in a Nolan Batman. You would say, why is that so incongruous and kind of out of place? Yeah.
Were you a fan of the comics at all?
No. This was the first. Like Tim Burton himself, famously had no interest in the comics, which he got a lot of stick for because people said, "Why is this guy doing it?" Because he knows nothing about comics. Yeah. But my dad did. My dad was a huge fan of the DC Detective Comics, and I remember him saying to me, when Batman, you know, we were watching Batman and stuff, and when around the time that Batman and Batman Returns came out, the Tim Burton ones, that good, they're finally doing Batman correctly. Yeah, this is serious. This is dark.
Oh, so he took it as a positive that Tim was bringing this style to it.
Yeah, he took it as a return to form. Like, you know, he hated the Adam West campy joke. He didn't. To him, Batman was not a joke. It was, you know,
of course,
he was a serious detective. You know, so he was really happy to see those movies. You know, he thought it was a good return to form. So for me, I had that positive reinforcement from my. Yeah. You know, my parents saying these are good movies and, you know, these are good, but also I just enjoyed the hell out of them. And again, they were slightly forbidden fruit because they were so violent, and especially I think Returns was a lot more forbidden because they'd seen the Penguin biting someone's nose off. Yeah. So they were like, yeah, you probably shouldn't be allowed to watch this, but that made it all the more desirable.
In the past, you have said to me that a few scenes are the reason for why you like them so much. And one of them in particular that we saw was when the Joker visits Vicki Vale's apartment.
Yeah. I think that's a great scene. Yeah.
Yeah. What about it do you like so much?
I think it's the introduction of the Joker's. What would you say? It's like his Pulp Fiction. His you know, the line he says to people that, you know, before he caps them.
Yes.
Basically, which obviously ties into Bruce Wayne's origin as Batman and how he became
the Pale Moonlight one.
The Pale Moonlight, yeah. Yes, it's just because it's so dark, and so like, and it's that moment where, you know, especially on repeat viewing, you realise that that's when Bruce twigs. Yeah. Who Jack Napier. He not only is the Joker Jack Napier, but Jack Napier is someone who is very, very, you know, important in his life. Yeah, he's absolutely made him who he was. You know, so
he recognises the name, the phrase that he says.
And kind of, from the night of his parents' murder. So it's that kind of double realization, like, 'cause he already knows. He says, "I know who you are," and all this kind of stuff. But then in that moment, he's like, you know, you are way more important to me than I really, I could ever have conceived.
Do you want to have a little listen to the scene?
Let's have a gander.
Well, Ms. Vale, another rooster in the henhouse. Take thy beak from out my heart. n'est-ce pas?
Most of the time.
I know who you are. Let me tell you about this guy I know, Jack. Mean kid, bad seed, hurt people. I like him already. Yeah, you know, the problem was he got sloppy. You know, crazy. He started to lose it. He had a head full of bad wiring, I guess. Couldn't keep it straight up here. He was the kind of guy who couldn't hear the train till it was 2 feet from him. You know what happened to this guy, Jack?
Wow.
Made mistakes. And then he had his lights out! Now you want to get nuts! Come on! Let's get nuts. Tell me something, my friend. You ever danced with the devil in the pale moonlight? What? I always ask that of all my prey. I just like the sound of it. Never rub another man's rhubarb.
Such an amazing scene.
It's only the last time when we went to see it in the cinema the other week that I realised that during all of this chaos and this potential death, murder, this murder has broken into your apartment, and Bruce Wayne's turned up unannounced, so you're in, a state, and Vicki is just eating popcorn.
Yeah, I noticed that.
Really casually.
Yeah.
I've seen that movie 90 times, and I've never ever noticed that before.
Yeah, that Kim Basinger is just munching away at some popcorn in the background, just enjoying the show.
What do you think? I mean, is that like, Keaton was on take 26 and she just got bored, or like?
Yeah, I'd like to think it's just Kim just thinking, I'm a stick-thin model. I haven't eaten all day. Jack Nicholson is eating the scenery. I might as well eat some of the props.
Yes.
Yeah.
that was good.
Thank you.
Thank
you. I've been practicing that one.
I assume that, to be fair, out of all the scenes in the movie, that is Keaton's big scene, or it's one of them anyway, one of his big speeches.
It's the only time he gets to really monologue.
As Bruce.
Yeah. And I found that interesting that the first major interaction between the two of them isn't as Batman and the Joker, it was Bruce Wayne and the Joker.
Yeah.
And Bruce is really taking the task to the Joker. The Joker is like baffled that someone's actually talking to him like this.
Yeah.
And he's like intrigued at this story. And you don't often see that side of the Joker where he's actually been like spoken to on the same level almost.
Yeah.
And I didn't actually I didn't expect that when I first saw it. The different sides of the coin that the Joker and Bruce Wayne are considered to be, or Batman and the Joker are. I know that that's the dichotomy between the two of them all the way through the comics and all the way through, major fiction, is that like they are both insane, but one's good insane, one bad insane, or one's chaos, one's order.
They both wear masks to an extent. And,
exactly, but the fact that like when Bruce Wayne comes into her apartment and says lots of space, and then Jack Nicholson, the Joker comes in and says lots of space,
which is a laugh, which is a joke. It was obviously a joke. That's meant to be picked up upon.
Exactly, but it's just interesting how they mirror each other. Yeah, and I didn't realise until I'd seen it again how much they mirror each other through it.
That's true.
Yeah.
Also, I was thinking last time I was watching it, what is Bruce's plan? Because we know from watching that scene that he's got the pan under his jacket, so he knows he's fairly safe from like
Clint
gunfire.
Eastwood, improvised bulletproof.
Flash Back to the Future.
Does all metal just reflect bullets?
Just silver, I guess.
Just silver trays that photographers who are down on their luck and going to work at a Gotham newspaper have. Her apartment is way too luxurious for her character.
Yeah.
Every time I watch it, I'm just, what is she doing in there, and why is she having to slum it?
It's like that scene in American Wealth in London when Jenny Agutter says, would you like to come back to my place? And they go back, and it's a beautiful Kensington apartment, and she's a nurse.
It doesn't really match up, does it? The job and the setting.
It doesn't ring true.
No.
Plus, why has she got an apartment in Gotham when she's like, she travels out? I got the feeling she wasn't from there. Anyway.
Yeah, actually, yeah, I got that. Yeah, she travels the world. She's like a photographer for Time magazine.
Yeah.
And Vogue and Cosmo, and she lives in Gotham, but she's never worked at the Gotham Gazette or
And she's
whatever.
come, yeah, she's. I think when she meets Knox, she actually like says, I've come to see Gotham and its wildlife.
Yeah, she's
You
already
work
gone
here.
on the market, and
Yeah.
unless she's renting, and it's like supposed to. Is there a deleted scene where like Bruce gives her an apartment or something that would make more sense?
Yeah, he's given her everything else, so
He found it pretty easy enough.
Yeah,
Since he
yeah.
doesn't really. I mean, he's the world's greatest detective. Maybe he's able to read a phone book if she
Yeah.
does live in Gotham. But
Yeah.
okay, we're picking holes apart in this. And,
Anyway, but yes, it is a great. It's such a great scene, like for so many reasons, and you really see like the Beetlejuice coming out of Michael Keaton, don't you? The
Yeah.
Beetlejuice side, like let's get nuts.
Yeah,
It's like-
again, he's able to really tap into a bit of a psycho persona that, again, hints at him having a bit of a broken psyche from his parents' death and
yeah,
tapping into
yeah.
the Bruce Wayne character more than the Batman character.
He's so incredibly underplayed for the rest of it, and I think that's
Yeah.
what I love about Keaton so much. Is
Very-
just how underplayed,
Very muted. Yeah.
very very muted. That's the one scene where he just loses it a little bit, but then I think it was deliberate, because he was trying to take a bullet so that Vicki could get away, or
Yeah.
there's obviously had some sort of strategy there, but
Or
yeah.
try and make it seem to the Joker that this Bruce Wayne couldn't be Batman, to try and like preserve his self-identity,
yeah,
his secret identity.
because that's what like Christian Bale did that in the Nolan ones. Like he really played Bruce as a hateable character,
Or
really.
when he crashes, when he takes the bullet for the Mr. Reese in the car in The Dark Knight, and he's
Yeah.
saying like, "Oh, I had no idea."
Yeah,
And
that's it. In the he feigns like
he feigns that he has no interest in knowing who is in the car or
Yeah, he
or
had-
why. He was just trying to get a good green light, or like
yeah, he was trying
didn't
to
wanna
catch
miss
the light. He
catch
says,
the light.
yeah, that's it. He doesn't.
Yeah.
He pretends that he doesn't know like what's going on. What's the word I'm thinking of? Ignorance.
Yeah, his
That's it,
plead
yeah.
ignorance and naivety. And, yeah.
Yeah, but no, Michael Keaton plays it like so brilliantly underplayed, like like understated. Sorry, and yeah, he's just. I think
It's hard not to when you're against Jack Nicholson doing such a confident performance,
Yeah.
and really allowing his freak flag to fly. Really,
Yeah,
yeah.
Like Nicholson's just obviously goes without saying that he's just absolutely incredible, and he just get the feeling like that he was just I think he was in his early 50s when he did this.
Yeah, 51, 52. Something.
Yeah, and he just he's made it. Like he's been Nicholson for decades. The
Yeah.
Jack Nicholson that everyone knows is the great movie star, and he just does not need. He's just doing his thing.
He's having fun.
He's just having fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's it. It's just such a because if you take the Joker makeup off, it's just Jack Nicholson. Like in many of his other movies, which is not a criticism, but is he is just that character. Like
Yeah.
in most of his other movies.
Is he your favourite Joker?
Yes. I'm.
If we say that Cesar Romero as the Adam West Joker,
Yeah.
you've got Jack Nicholson as the Keaton Joker, you've got Heath Ledger as the Bale Joker, you've got Jared Leto as the Affleck Joker.
Yeah.
The less said about him, the better. Sorry, there may be some fans of Leto out there, but and Mark Hamill as the voice of the animated Joker.
I think the Joker is the most kind of. I think to be fair on Jared Leto, I think he came at the worst possible time to play the Joker.
Following Ledger was always going to be hard.
Yeah, but it's. I think like most things, it's apples and oranges. Because it's just completely different. That's what I say. Even though it's the same character, like on paper, but the way it's played, the way they played him, like the way Jack Nicholson versus Heath Ledger played him, it's a completely different animal, like altogether. And
have you heard of in the comics how they've tried to explain the Joker in terms of how there've been three?
No.
Like canonically, I may be getting this wrong, but this is how it was explained to me anyway. That canonically, there's been three Jokers all the
Okay.
way through the comics. There's been the Golden Age Joker,
Yeah.
who is more like a gangster, like Nicholson.
Yeah.
Then because he was getting a bit to like the comic the the rules of comics came in, and they had to change him from being a dastardly gangster into the clown prince of crime, which is where things like the boutonniere squirting stuff and him having clown cars and really playing up his clown persona came in. That's the Silver Age Joker, which is Cesar Romero.
Okay, yeah.
From the Adam West. And then more recently, I think it was around about the Killing Joke time, 1980s, kind of like when everything's getting dark and gritty. That's when the Anarchy Joker came in.
Okay.
Which is where Heath Ledger comes from.
And would you say Nicholson was a kind of an amalgamation of all of those?
According to people who are more up to date with it than me, they have said that he is the Golden Age Joker. He's the gangster. He's like, I'm going to hold up this bank for money, I'm going to take over Gotham,
There is kind of elements of chaos, to him, and sort of anarchy and punk to him.
Oh, there always has been. And the same with Cesar Romero, but it's terms of like nihilism and chaos, and I just want to see the world burn.
Yeah.
For no reason. I don't want money. I'll burn money like Heath Ledger does. And that's the third interpretation of the Joker, which is the one we're currently on still as well in the comics, as far as I'm aware.
That's the Joker lore, is it?
That's the Joker lore. Yeah.
That's what I think annoyed me about the Leto one, was that he was clearly kind of into money and cars, and he was kind of like this pimp gangster character, and I was like, that's what kind of didn't ring true for me, or didn't kind of.
Yeah.
I think Nicholson has a lot more in common with the Heath Ledger Joker than people kind of realize.
Yeah,
I think
because
I think that there is that kind of. Although I think what was really interesting about the Jack Nicholson one was the art side of it.
Yes,
because they obviously really it's not something you notice straight away, but they really try and push that. Because when you see his apartment, there's beautiful artworks on the walls, and they kind of push that he is this gangster. They don't really talk about the art side until he becomes a Joker, but you see that he's obviously a fan of fine art, and because you see it in lots of photography and everything in his apartment. And it's only like the sort of 50th, 60th time you watch it, you might even notice something like that, but then it kind of comes into his character.
See, are you talking about the apartment with the pictures of Jerry Hall on the wall?
Yeah.
I thought that was her apartment. That's why she returns and he's like, honey, I'm home.
No, I don't think so, because he gets dressed there. He's like looking in the mirror and he's like getting
because I thought that was the crime boss's Jack Palance's apartment with her. And like he was coming in and being there. That's why all the pictures are on the wall. That's because she's so vain, and you don't actually see Joker's apartment. I thought.
Oh, okay. So you think that might have been their shared apartment or just her apartment?
I thought it was hers, like the when a crime boss has like different mistresses.
Oh yeah, and put them up in different
and that was just his with Jerry Hall.
I always assumed that was Napier's apartment, but no, maybe you might be right.
But that's when Jack Palance as the crime boss, I can't remember his name, sorry, but
I'm trying to think now.
Exactly,
it's terrible.
But he's talking about Access Chemicals, and he Napier is in the seat messing around with cards, and he's saying, what we should do is empty it out.
Grissom.
Carl
Grissom.
Jeez.
Sorry.
Thank you. So Grissom, but like Jerry Hall comes back there, and everything's the same aesthetic, and it's all, I feel, taking place in his apartment.
Oh, okay.
That's where Napier comes back, kills Grissom, and then Jerry Hall comes back and he's like dressed in Grissom's stuff.
I'll have to, because there's two different kind of, like, you see it in by night, it looks like completely different. It's all lit by like lamps, and it's very, very, very dark. Now there is that one we first introduced to Jack Nicholson where it's all very well lit. So you think that's actually the same place?
I believe so.
Oh, okay.
just when looking at it. That's what I took
coming
from
the person who says he's seen it 90 times. I might have to rewatch it.
Yeah. Well, yeah, you've probably been too busy looking. Like Jack Nicholson just takes up most of the screen when he's on it. So yeah. Like you said, only recently you've been looking at the.
It's only when you have these conversations that you really realise these small details. But no, that's a very good point. Yeah.
Yeah. So going back to the different iterations of the Joker, Jared Leto in Suicide Squad is apparently a newer version of that gangster Joker.
Okay.
So
like a fourth type, or like
but it's still it's like a more updated version of the first.
Right. Okay.
There's still being a gangster, a clown, and an anarchist. So we've done one of each, but we're going back now. And if Jared Leto is going to be any of those three, canonically, which one is he going to be? He's going to be more like the gangster, because of his pimped out lifestyle, him being like a crime boss, and him like loving the guns and loving the things. He is obsessed with money and gold, but he's not like silly. So the fact is that it kind of like rules out the anarchist, rules out the clown, leaves the gangster, which allows Harley Quinn to be a gangster's mole, and the typical stereotypes that come with that, I think.
Well, it's points well made, but let's face it, that film doesn't deserve Suicide Squad really doesn't deserve much analysis and much time of thought. I mean, I don't know if you agree, but I think that was a complete disaster.
Oh, I wasn't a fan at all, but now that James Gunn's doing Volume 2 of Suicide Squad,
which is called
Suicide Squad 2.
Okay.
I can only imagine something original like that. Who knows, he may turn it all around and make the reason why these people with bats and guns are fighting gods make sense, I guess, or at least fun to enjoy.
God.
I don't know.
It was such a nightmare. I mean, oh God, let's not get started on...
Yeah, let's not get dragged into the James Gunn debacle, really, or DCEU.
Something I wanted to talk about was the world that this Batman 1989 was born into, and what's the state of movies was, and superhero movies was at that time. Because I think it's interesting that now the market is so saturated with superhero. I mean, it's the thing to do now. For any A-lister, it's there's you have to be a superhero to be an A-lister. Pretty much that's what happens these days. But in 1989, I mean, we'd had Superman movies. I'm not a huge Superman fan, but I think we'd had about four Superman movies.
Yeah, I think so.
First of which being in 1978, thereabouts.
Yeah, I think.
And there was. Can you think of any other superheroes movies that had been done up to the point of Batman?
In 1989, maybe stuff like, I don't know, the Roger Corman Fantastic Four. I'm not too sure, unless that was early 90s. There was a few rubbish Captain Americas that aren't really worth talking about either. But no, apart from that, Blade was 1998, X-Men was 2000, so Howard the Duck in 92.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Howard
so
the Duck.
If they...
I love Howard the Duck, by the way.
I've never seen it.
Really?
That could be another episode.
Yeah, it's brilliant. It's brilliant.
Really?
Yeah. No, It really is. It's one of those movies that you get such a bad rep, and you hear all such how terrible it is. I watched it. I thought, this is brilliant. I don't get what's bad about this. This is so out there and crazy. And I don't know what people expected from a movie called Howard the Duck. What it was going to be more. It didn't take itself seriously. I don't know. I thought it was brilliant.
Okay.
Anyway, that's a whole.
Gonna have to give that a go.
Yep.
Okay.
But yeah, I just think it's interesting. To. We're on the cusp of the Batman coming out in 2021.
Yeah.
And I pretty much couldn't care less.
We have been
that.
oversaturated by Batmans now, haven't we?
Yeah. And I love Batman. Batman is my pretty much the only superhero. I'm super excited. When the movie comes out, I'm really excited. Even I'm now I couldn't care less. I'm just I don't care who plays him. I'm not bothered because it's been done to death. But I mean, in being a kid in 1989. And having Bat logos just appearing all over bus stops and billboards, the hype apparently was just ridiculous. It was huge.
Oh, I can't imagine how excited I would have been. I imagine it would be the same kind of hype that Spider-Man got back in 2000 and 2001.
2001.
The first one.
I remember that very, very well, and how exciting that was. And you get this weird thing. I was talking to someone about this kind of pre-hype you get, around movies like The Dark Knight, which was, I remember that being just even before the movie came out, and not even really based on trailers. It was just that you knew it was coming. Yeah. The buzz about it was this kind of supernatural hype, and you just knew this was going to be an incredible film. Yeah. And it was. Yeah. And it paid off.
No, completely.
Are you a Superman fan?
Not really. I've always classified him as the most boring superhero in terms of he's the kid in the playground who has all the powers and nothing could ever hurt him, and you always need kryptonite to make him susceptible to things. Yeah. I was never a big fan of the Christopher Reeve ones. They seemed a bit too cheesy, and they seemed a bit I don't know, maybe I was a bit too old when I tried to watch them for the first time, and I needed to be a bit more younger. But the idea of a man jumping over who could fly and fly around the world just didn't really appeal to me that much.
I think that it's, I think Batman, the Tim Burton Batmans came along at just the right time for me and you.
Yeah.
Because, we were kind of like young kids just getting into movies at that point. And as I said, for me, there were always these kind of movies that, you felt were kind of, something you should be watching, even though they were marketed to more maybe like older teenagers. But, they were just so dark and like violent that they were just sat in this kind of sweet spot where it's like you really, really wanted to watch them, but they were just slightly forbidden, which made them, even more desirable to watch.
Batman for me has always been the most interesting superhero because of his. I am going to sound cliche by saying it, but like the fact that he is such a torn, difficult character to get your head around, and the rogues gallery. He has the best rogues gallery, possibly of any superhero I find, maybe rivaled by Spider-Man.
Yeah,
but just I fell in love with the villains more than I fell in love with him.
Yeah,
in a way. And seeing him combat them, having no superpowers essentially apart from his intelligence, and well, like he says in Justice League, I'm rich.
Yeah, yeah.
I found to be rather intriguing because when I was younger, I could be Batman if I grew up and lost my parents and had money.
You'd have to bump them off first, but exactly. I think that I know what you mean. It's almost in some way an achievable goal. You think this technology, and that's what the Chris Nolan ones tapped into, was that this technology does exist. Yeah. Like, there's these things. It's not that far fetched.
No, exactly.
That if you were rich and nuts like Batman is, you could essentially do that.
Yeah.
It's not like thing, but like you say with Superman, it's supernatural. It's not possible.
There are always aliens coming from a different planet trying to take him down, and I think Man of Steel is just a fantastic example of how you could take an interesting premise, because I like the first half of Man of Steel, where it's like, oh, you aren't from this planet, this is your conflict, this is your central inner conflict. How do you be this man of the earth when you're not of this earth? And then they just turn it into Transformers.
Yeah,
and it's
smashy,
crash bang wallop.
Yeah.
What a
video!
What a video!
What a video!
And
I knew we'd get a partridge in.
Obviously, got to get a partridge in there
somehow. And also, I was very happy to see Kevin Costner in that movie.
Oh, in Man of Steel.
Yeah, Man of Steel. Yeah, that was the nice.
We've moved on to Man of Steel now. We should be talking about Batman.
What was this about again?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But yeah, again, Batman's just always intrigued me because of probably the darkness in it again. Not because I'm a child of darkness and need it to be, but Superman was just too cookie cutter. I feel he was just too Boy Scout, and it didn't speak to the rebel in me when I was growing up. So I wanted the guy who broke the rules, the vigilante, who could see what justice was, and he knew that he had to do it at whatever cost.
And Batman wears armor and dresses in black, and like Superman wears like sort of cotton.
As two metalheads that we are, I'm pretty sure we appreciated the black.
Yeah, it's slimming as well.
Yes, as we are both dressed in black. Not all in black, but black and jeans,
But yeah, it's he just appealed more, like, and that was again another thing about just sort of growing up with the imagery and the marketing materials of the first one. Just growing up with just that solid bat symbol, like it just said it all.
Yeah.
Like, because the original poster, you wouldn't have a poster like that these days. It was not possible. The poster now, the poster as it was in 1989 was the bat symbol, and it just said Nicholson, Keaton, and I just like to make the point that Nicholson came first, even though he was the villain.
Oh, he's the biggest star, though.
Yeah.
All star power,
That's true, but I just think that's interesting. It was called Batman, and it's,
You'd think Nicholson is Batman, if that was the case.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's crazy, but anyway.
Well, I think that taps into the fact that, again, you had Superman films before, you had maybe, again, I'm not too sure on the timelines, but you'd had like the odd Marvel film here and there. But in terms of Batman, I'm pretty sure, I'm not too extensive on it either, but the Adam West ones never really went into his backstory. They never really explained this guy has grown up with no parents because they were killed in a mugging outside the Monarch Theatre.
Yeah.
And
I wonder if that was ever mentioned in the...
I'm unsure.
I've not seen much of the original series of Adam West, which is brilliant in its own way.
Yes.
Don't get me wrong.
So when it came to the opening scene of the film, which, like you've got a favourite scene, this is probably my favourite scene.
Okay.
The fact is, because I hadn't seen it in a while, when essentially the opening scene is a family leaves the Monarch Theatre, a mother, a father and a young son, and they're trying to hail a taxi. Essentially they can't find a taxi, so they go down a dark alley in which a robbery takes place, essentially. And only after the father gets attacked, the mother's left alive, and the son watches it all, it pans up and you see the fact that Batman is watching all this from a rooftop. And it's a bit of a bait and switch for people who know Batman's backstory. Everyone expects this to be the origin story, which a film like this would start off with. They know, they've seen it done to death now, no pun intended.
Yeah.
But the fact is that we know that his parents die. We know that it's a horrible thing. We know he grows up with Alfred. We know he has lots of means, and therefore he tries to fight crime because of it.
Yeah.
But the fact is that I feel like Burton may have knew this, and for the fans of the comics and for the fans of the history of Batman, it's an interesting bait and switch to say, oh, look, here's a family going to get mugged. This kid's Batman, this kid's... And then it's not. It's actually taking place in real life, and Batman is going to attack the attackers.
Yeah, because for the true fans of the comic book, that would be, that'd be such a great intro.
Yeah, and that's why it was for me, because I'm familiar with it because of how oversaturated Batman and his origin story has been recently.
Yeah, because you see it in Batman, 1989.
Yep.
You see it in Batman Forever.
Yes.
Which is Joel Schumacher's movie.
Yes.
You see it in...
Batman
Begins. You see it in the Batman vs Superman.
Batman vs Superman opens with as well.
That's the cool thing. That was Zack Snyder, wasn't it? Batman vs Superman. The one cool thing I loved about the Snyder's version was the pearls getting stuck in the clip, the chamber. The chamber of the gun, and the trigger snapping the pearls. I thought that was really cool. But
Zack Snyder's got a good eye.
Yeah,
he knows how to make an interesting shot for trailers and movies.
One thing about Zack Snyder is that I really, really like. I think some of his movies are good, some of his movies are terrible, but he does the best intros.
He does do really good intros.
Like Dawn of the Dead, the intro with the Johnny Cash.
Yes.
Over it, the Watchmen intro with the Bob Dylan. Oh my, that was so amazing. But
it's a shame that the rest of the films don't really match his intros.
Yeah, like Sucker Punch. Jesus Christ, what was that about?
Again, we're segueing off into Sucker Punch territory.
Anyway, it's cool. We can jump around. It's fun.
Yeah, it's true. So, Matt, we've been over the fact that we know which Joker this is. This is Gangster Joker. We have been over the fact that Nicholson plays it fantastically well. We've been over the fact that the opening scene is a really good bait and switch in terms of the origin of Bruce Wayne's parents' death. And what this film does that is different to others is including the Joker in the origin of Batman.
Yeah, because that was not in the comics. That was not in any lore previous to this Burton movie.
As far as I'm aware, Batman Begins is the closest to it, with Joe Chill being the robber who kills Bruce and Martha Wayne.
Yeah.
So now with Jack Napier being inserted into this Batman origin in the same way that Batman is in the Joker's origin, dropping him into the vat of acid, do you think that as a stylistic choice, including each other in each other's origins, is a worthwhile inclusion, since it is changing the origin of who killed Batman's parents?
Yeah, I think, for a self-contained movie like this, that could have been a standalone. I mean, this could have been unsuccessful or just not had the sort of franchise value, that it came to have. I think it works really, really well.
Okay.
And I think that scene is a nice microcosm of that, because it just shows that this person, just Jack Napier, means so much more to Bruce than he thought. Not only did he unintentionally make Jack Napier into a monster, but Jack Napier made him into what he is.
Yeah.
I was a boy, now I'm a bat. That sort of vibe.
Sure.
So yeah, I think it's a really good choice, and I can't imagine. I mean, I can understand, die-hard comic book fans, saying that's not the law, you can't change it, and all that kind of stuff. But knowing nothing of the comics myself when I went into it, like Tim Burton, I thought it was fantastic.
So, do you agree then with Jack Napier being the origin of the Joker, rather than Joker having an ambiguous background and origin story that he does in the comics? It's never really explained in the comics where he comes from.
Well, the if that's the case, I mean, I think that I think it kind of works as an extension of Jack Napier's personality, because I think that when you see Jack Napier, just Jack Nicholson being a gangster and being himself, he's not that far removed from the Joker. He's already into art, as we know. He's already a psychopath, a narcissistic serial killer, and he's Jack Nicholson, so he's always grinning and laughing, so there's not, I don't think it was a very small push,
right,
as Heath Ledger would say, to make him into what he was. And plus, I don't know if it was more ambiguous in the comics, but Heath Ledger's Joker for me was a bit of a rip-off of the Hitcher, of the killer from the Hitcher, because that movie, that Rutger Hauer movie, from the 80s, because that is the same thing. Like, they pick him up and they say he just seems to have dropped out of the sky. He's got no identification. He's got nothing in his pockets, apart from weapons. That's it. So that didn't feel like a truly original concept anyway to me.
Okay.
So I was quite happy with the way they did it in the Burton movie.
See, I feel like I'm the opposite. I don't know if it's because I'm so used to the Heath Ledger Joker having such an ambiguous backstory, and his, do you know how I got these scars kind of explanations of how he descended into madness?
Yeah.
But I felt like he is such an enigma of a person.
Yeah.
That the persona of the Joker means more than the persona of Jack Napier. I feel like Jack Napier is something that can, like you say, it's just held in this film. If it was just self-contained, then that'd be fine. But if we're going to take the Tim Burton films as canon, I feel like the Joker is given a bit of a disservice by giving an origin when the other Jokers aren't.
Making him more human.
Yeah, essentially.
You want a character like that to be somewhat supernatural, somewhat like, you just have no... he's more of a metaphor.
Yes.
Just a complete metaphor for chaos.
Yes.
And stuff. There was an interesting theory behind the Heath Ledger. Sorry, going back to the Nolan version. But in the Nolan version, the Joker says, "Do you know how I got these scars?" And he says, he asked that of several people.
Yeah.
And there's this in comedy. There's a rule of three, that the third one is the punchline or the truth.
Yeah.
And when he comes to Batman, it's the third time he's asked, "Do you know how I got these scars?" And he says, "No, but I know you got these," and so he interrupts him. So the theory goes that he was going to tell him that was going to be the genuine story of how he became him, and Batman interrupts him, so we never find out.
I like your your Christian Bale Batman impression, because it sounds like Cartman from South Park.
Hey guys, I didn't care, get these scares.
Very good. So we started the discussion talking about 1989's Batman, and we finished with a South Park version of The Dark Knight. So went on a bit of a journey, but anyway, that's enough for today. So say goodbye, Matt.
Bye, Matt.
And that's bye from me, Mike. Thank you very much for listening, and we'll speak to you again soon.